Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Worship Team Podcast. My name is Alex Infiegin, and I am your host. I wanted to take a second to thank our longtime listeners. If you've been listening since the beginning or just for a while now, thanks so much for tuning in regularly. I hope this podcast has helped you in some small way to lead better at your church. And if you're a brand new listener, hello, and thanks for tuning in. I really hope that you like this episode, and I want to encourage you to go back and listen to all the other episodes we've done. I try to do one episode a month, and I try to keep them as helpful and practical as possible. So check out the backlog of episodes, and you can do that either at my website, alexonmusic.com, or right within your podcast app. Speaking of your podcast app, I wanted to take a second to ask you to leave me a review and a rating on iTunes. And I don't ask this often, actually almost never, but I'm asking now. So if you've liked this podcast or if you've gotten something out of it that's been helpful and valuable to you, could you just take, a minute out of your schedule to write a review for me? You can do that right within your podcast app on your iPhone if you're using the default one, or you can do it on iTunes, and I'll put a link in the show notes today that just says click here to write a review. And so that would be super helpful if you could write me a review. It helps get the podcast out to more people. Today we are trying something new. We're going to be doing a worship leader roundtable. I've been wanting to do this for quite some time now, maybe 5 or 6 months, but it's been hard to get everyone's schedules aligned. The idea is to do this maybe once every 3 or 4 months, where we gather 3 or 4 worship leaders together to discuss a topic and trade ideas and share thoughts, and hopefully you guys getting to hear how they do things at their church will be helpful for you as you figure out how to do things at your church. So today's the pilot episode of that. We're going to be talking about auditions. I'm really looking forward to sharing this episode with you. And in fact, why don't we just jump right in and let the guys share their wisdom with us today. Hey everybody, I'm here with my good friends Justin Bell, Chris Vacher, and Brenton Collier, who have all been on the podcast before, and I'm really thankful that they're here today. We're kind of trying something different. It's called a worship leader roundtable, where we're getting 3 different perspectives on how to do auditions. So let me have the guys introduce themselves and where they are serving at their church and kind of what size church they work at. And so let's start with you, Justin. Go ahead.
Hey, Alex. My name's Justin Bell. I'm from Calvary Nexus. We're a multi-site church in Camarillo, California, and we have about 1,000 adults on a Sunday morning.
Okay, Chris, we've got Chris Vacher, who is coming back on the podcast. Chris, tell us where you're from and kind of how big your church is.
Yeah, I'm the creative arts pastor at C4 Church, just east of Toronto. And we're also a multi-site church. We're a congregation of about 2,500 people.
Okay, and then we've got Brenton Collier. Brenton, tell us where you're coming from and how many people are at your church.
Sure. I'm Brenton, and I'm from Monterey, California, worship pastor at Calvary, Monterey. And our church is about 750 on a weekend.
Cool. So, and the reason I asked what size your guys' church is not because, we care about the numbers per se, but because I think auditions are going to look different based on whatever size your church is. And obviously today we're talking about auditions, and this is the first question, and this is for all 3 of you to answer. Do you guys open your audition up to everybody? Anybody? Can anybody audition? Or do you have kind of a limited, do you stand on stage and say, anyone who wants to come audition, come, whatever, if you play the kazoo or if you play the spoon, whatever, you can come audition. How does it work for you guys?
You can't play one spoon.
2 spoons.
If they play 1 spoon, they're out. 2 spoons, they're in.
Okay. So, Brenton, do you guys open it up to the entire church?
Yeah, that's a great question. For us, the size of church that we are, we've got a couple of worship leaders here, and my kind of vision for it has evolved a little bit over the years. But the short answer, and we could probably get into the reasons of why and the vision behind it as we go, but the answer is yes, I do. If anybody wants to come, they can come. And I try to do the audition with them personally, just because as a pastor of our church, I love to meet people and connect with them and hear their story and get to know, where they're at with the Lord and how they've become a part of our church. I don't always have time or the chance to do it, so one of our other worship leaders may. But, what that means is it's a little extra time commitment, but I think it's well worth it. I mean, there are some people I kind of already know, like, there's really probably not a chance this person will get plugged into our worship ministry, but I still love to meet him and give him that chance and connect with him. So, yeah, anybody.
Chris?
No. we're the opposite. So, specifically with instruments, we have a certain sound we're going for, and we have a certain lineup on our teams, and we have certain kind of roles we're looking to fill. So, if you're a kazoo player, even if you do play multiple spoons, or if there are other instruments that sort of don't fit, we love them. We're glad they're part of our church, but we don't feel like we have to make an opening for them. We're looking for other things too. Like we only audition people who are part of our church. Like this is their home church. We're not looking for people who are looking for just a place to play. People on our teams are followers of Christ. We believe that anyone who's part of our team is helping to lead worship. Not every church does that. We do that. So there is a pastoral component to it. We're looking for things like, is this your church home? How else are you involved? Are you part of a connect group? But when it comes to instruments specifically, we've got a certain lineup we're looking for.
Okay. Justin, what about you?
So, pretty similar to both the guys, I guess kind of a little bit in between. We'll use our process, which I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. We have a process leading up to it where we'll find out, like Chris said, if Calvary Nexus is number one, their home church, and then number two, we find out if they're a Christian. And if neither of those things fit, then we won't audition them. I might spend time with them and I might talk with them, and try to help them to work through those things. But I won't audition a person who's not a believer or doesn't call our church their home church. And then also, in addition, if they play kind of an off the wall instrument that we don't need, generally we won't audition them. Although we have in the past, we have a guy who plays trumpet in our church. We have another guy who plays saxophone and the flute, and we've used him a couple times, and he just adds a lot whenever he plays. So I try to be open to new stuff, but generally speaking, we stick to the main instruments that are being used in most worship recordings today.
Cool. Okay. So when you're going to have an audition and you're like, okay, we're going to make this available to either for some of you, everyone, or for some of you, a specific group of people, how do you get the word out? Like, should I announce it from the stage and then get all these kind of not great people? Or should I stick to a specific channel and only aim for this group of people? How do you guys get the word out about your auditions?
Yeah, the first time we did auditions, I've been here at the church for 2 years, and the first time we did auditions, it had been a long time since doing auditions before that. And so we did use stage time on Sunday morning because it was the first time. It was something new. We wanted people to know that this is something that we were going to be doing now that I was here. So we did a short little video that we ran on Sunday morning. We used that video on social media and in our kind of monthly, our regular distribution channels. But part of our process is a video audition. And I know we're going to talk about process. And so we wanted to sort of communicate in the medium that we were asking people to communicate back with us. And so that was video. Now we do it mostly just through social media. Like people personally on our teams, our worship leaders, our church-wide social media. We don't advertise it from the front.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, it really depends. If I need musicians, if we're low on musicians, then we'll do something that we call an open audition, and I'll explain that a little bit more as we get into the process and the nuts and the bolts. But that's something that we'll announce. We'll put it in our announcements. We'll promote on social media so that we can get as many people out as possible. But in addition to that, I have one-on-one auditions going throughout the entire year. We have a card with our bulletin, like most of you guys probably have. We call it a Connect card, and there's a little box on there that says Reach. and if they click that box, then somebody calls them to help them to get involved in a ministry. If they find out on the call that they're interested in worship ministry, that gets on my desk, and then I start the process with that person, leading to a one-on-one audition.
Brenton?
Yeah, so we do a little bit of all of that kind of stuff as well. I try to, if we can, once or twice a year, do the from the pulpit announcement. Usually the spring and the fall seem to be kind of good seasons to do that. Catch a lot of people there, and we do it all. All of the application and everything that they fill out is all online, so it's real easy. So we usually, what we'll do is announce it and then say, like, hey, if you're interested, there will be someone in the Welcome Center that'll talk with you about it, and you can, register or at least get us your info right then and there at a computer in the Welcome Center. So we'll do it that way, and then we'll just do a day where we do a whole bunch of auditions. But most of the people that come through are people that either just find me after service and said, hey, I saw you on the stage. Can I talk to you about helping lead? And that's neat. And I usually always try to collect their information. I used to say, online is the application. Here's the web address. You can fill it out. And I found that kind of fell through the cracks a lot. So I always try to collect their info and then send them the link. And then I have a way to follow up with them. So yeah, kind of one-on-one things. And then we also, it's just on the website. If you take a second, if you're halfway interested, you can find it pretty quick where to serve in the worship ministry. So I'll just get emails from time to time that pop in. Hey, so-and-so wants to get involved. So that's nice. I don't have to do anything,
Yeah, that's cool.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I think if you're in a season where you're needing musicians, then you want to go above and beyond, and if you want to get their info, follow up with them. If you're doing well on musicians, put the ball in their court, I think, is a good idea. If they're not driven enough to contact you to get on the worship team, then they're probably not serious about it. I don't mean to be a jerk, but saying that, but it's just that's just for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, and I'll add too. I have like a pre-built email. We do the same as Brent. We have the first step is online, and so I have a pre-built email. So anytime I get a contact from somebody, or somebody comes to me after service says, "Hey," that the first thing is, I can really quickly just copy paste this email with all the instructions, all the expectations, and then the link to the online form. And then it's not every time I'm having to type out, oh yeah, where's that link? What was the YouTube link for that video? Where do we find those instructions? It's just it's already saved, it's already built, and it just goes out real quick.
Yeah, template. That's good. Okay, so one thing that I've tried in the past, and maybe you guys have done this too, is instead of doing like an open call, like anyone who wants to audition can come audition, I'll like put something really specific in the bulletin that says like looking for drummers with experience of an intermediate to advanced level. Like I specifically need this type of musician. Do you guys ever do that?
We haven't, but I'm thinking about doing it because we seem to always struggle with drummers at our church. So I'm actually I'm thinking about doing that for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, so the next question then, so you've got the announcement out there, people are interested, and you guys have already kind of explained some of this. A lot of your leading up to the audition is online. So you're meeting with people, do you guys do interviews with people who are interested in playing? Like before they even get to audition, do you sit down with them to get to know their story, or do you just collect that information online and to take their word for it?
Yeah, for me, it depends on the person. It depends on if they're known to our community or not. So I just met yesterday actually with a guy he and his family have been coming for about a month. And every Sunday he's been here, he's talked to me about joining our worship team. So sometimes that's like, great initiative. I also want to know more of your story. So I met with him yesterday and we went out for coffee and that's what we did. Like just heard his story and heard about his experience and how did he end up at our church. And then part of that conversation is laying out expectations. If you were to be part of our team, here's what we expect. And we have some expectations around, like, we don't do a midweek rehearsal. So we have really high expectations for personal preparation. We have high expectations for gear. We play everything to a click. We do everything with in-ears. So you've got to be able to bring that to the table in a sense as a musician. And so if like before we even get there, they say like, oh man, like I can only play once every 3 months. Well, we need more than that. We have higher expectations. So I will often do that before, especially if they're unknown, if they're new to our church. I'll have a conversation like that before we even go down the road in the process.
Yeah, so for us, if I don't recognize the name and I don't know who the person is, if they get through the first two steps of our process and I still don't know who they are, then I'll either ask around or maybe we'll sit down together or like Brenton said, I'll even ask them questions after the audition. What we do is we first ask them to read a book by our pastor wrote a book called Fruitful Worship. You can get it on velochurchleaders.org, by the way, for free. But we have them read that book because we want to make sure that they understand what we believe about worship, what our theology of worship is. And then we have them fill out, we call it a questionnaire, but it's the same sort of thing as an application, and it has about 11 various questions, just really finding out where they're at spiritually. Are they a believer? Do they have any experience? Our last question on there that we added a couple years ago is there anything in your life that would disqualify you from being in ministry? That's just that's a good time just to find out if there's anything questionable going on in their lives. And usually people put down something that's like, no, that's not a big deal, that you stole candy when you were 5 from the store. You can still play on the worship team. But if we see anything weird on that application or anything that kind of gets our attention, like, maybe they've left their last 3 churches because they didn't like their pastors or something, we'll look into that a little bit more. So it just kind of depends on from person to person, but we're really big on putting the ball in their court, and we figure if they're not willing to go through those first 2 steps, then they're probably not going to show up for practice.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So it sounds like a lot of you guys are doing the online informational / information collection process on your websites and stuff like that, which is really cool. I kind of was old school and was doing it through paper. Like someone would come up to me and say, I'm interested in auditioning, and I'd give them, here's our culture, here are our expectations of you, here's what we're looking for, read through that and then email me. But you guys are doing it all online, and I think that, that is the future of auditions, I think, even for a small church, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, there are even some free resources and some things through Google, that you can set up a questionnaire pretty quick and easy and simply. And it sounds like most of us are using a lot of online tools for communication and distribution anyway. So that's even like another under the radar way to find out, are they, savvy online and with computers? Are they going to be able to figure this out? And that'll kind of help you determine where they're at in that area as well.
That's really good. So if our listeners are wondering what your online collection process looks like, they could probably just go to each of your websites, and I'll link that in the show notes, and they can go there and see and kind of steal your forms maybe for themselves. Would that be cool?
Absolutely.
Totally. Hey, Alex, one thing we do in our online part is that we do a little video invitation, and we do a lot of video in our church, and we invest a lot of time and resources into our video. But with this one, we actually just do it literally I pop up on my MacBook and hit record, because that's the kind of video we want back from people. We don't want them to spend hours and hours and hours on video production. That's not really what we're looking for in the audition. Basically, I want to know, can you play? Can you sing? What's your gear like? And usually, most worship leaders have the musical ability. You can identify, even if you can't hear every note or you can't hear all of the tone, you can identify whether they're going to fit or not in your team. And so to put that thought in their mind, we did it from our end. We gave people permission to say, no, we're looking for kind of lower caliber video. Literally flip open your MacBook, hit record, have the audio track going, and just play or sing, find the key that's right for you. So that's one thing that we've heard from people they've really appreciated, that the video production pressure is way down, because really the first step is we just want to hear you play.
That's intentional. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like most auditions actually have 2 auditions, right? It's like the the one-on-one audition, which either happens in your office or via a cheap video submission on YouTube, right? That's like the first step to even getting a real audition, wouldn't you guys say? Like, you shouldn't just say, hey, come audition like on the stage with our team. You've got to like vet them first. And so you either do that after church in your office or, like on an online submission of a video. And then you guys watch that and you say, okay, they look ready. They look good. So what's the actual audition itself look like for each of your churches?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in that, after they fill out that application, they download an audition packet, which has specific songs for them to prepare for that audition. So I'll say, okay, which one did you pick? And they'll let me know. Great. So I'll play and sing. If it's a vocalist, they'll sing along. And then I have vocalists sing lead on a song and also harmony on a song. Guitar player, they can play. Electric player, we have them plug in. But then keys, drums, bass, we get up on the stage, we run through the system, we listen to the tones. For drums, we play with the click. And usually I invite a bass player to play with the drummer, and vice versa. If a bass player is auditioning, we'll get up on stage, run through the ears, run the click. And a little tip, I usually just get right into the music of it, say, hey, welcome, let's pray, and then start the song. Because I always found when I try to like chat with people and welcome them, they're just uncomfortable the whole time until they get over that, like, okay, I did my thing. So I usually just cut to the chase, get right to it, and then afterwards I'll say, okay, great, good job, let's chat a little bit, let's talk about kind of where we're at.
Chris?
Yeah, so our video audition is actually the first step in our process. By the way, I say process, and y'all were saying process. Is that a Canadian thing? I don't know.
It is a Canadian thing.
I'll keep saying process, and you guys can catch up. So our guiding one of our guiding kind of leadership values in our worship ministry is Psalm 78:72, talking about David, that he shepherded Israel with upright heart and guided them with a skillful hand. And so we talk about that all the time in our worship ministry. My people they're sick of me. They're sick of hearing me talk about it, but we're talking heart and hands all the time, heart and hands. And so in our audition process, we are looking for both. We're not just looking for, are you a killer guitar player? And we're also not only looking for, are you a really nice person? We're looking for both. We're looking for character and competency. And so we use the audition process to like fill our teams with people like that. And then we use our ministry to develop those things in our people as well. So the video audition is the first step, and we ask people to do that, and that fills the pool. And then we schedule audition dates, and we don't invite everyone who does a video audition. And we look through the videos, and we'll invite some of those people to a live audition, which is normally in the evening. We give them 2 or 3 nights to choose from. We bring a full band, including worship leaders. We have 4 other worship leaders who are part of our church. And we have at least one worship leader at all of the auditions. And we do it full out. We use Planning Center to schedule it. We put songs and keys in there. We invite people in. We throw them in the deep end right away. We do click track. We do everything. And whatever their instrument is, they play that instrument in the team, and we have a full team around them. And then same thing like Brenton. Like we just, you're over the top encouraging. You're so thankful they're there. You're giving them water. You're making sure they've got everything. You're patient with them. You never want the audition to depend on whether or not like they're feeling jumpy or nervous. Now that might be part of like the development process out of the audition, but you don't want them to like botch the moment because they didn't have water. Like let's set people up to succeed as best we can, especially in our context when we're not inviting everyone. Like they've already made it over the first hurdle, so they've got the skill. They can do that. Like we're seeing some good things. Now let's really help them succeed.
So can I ask you a follow-up question? So you say you don't invite everybody. So do you set up a whole audition night for just one electric guitar player, or do you have 3 electric guitar players and they all take turns? Or do you do an electric guitar player and a female vocalist auditioning at the same time? And how do you listen to how they're doing with all that noise going on?
Yeah, so we'll do one audition slot per person. Our audition slots are 45 minutes, and that's about like 30 minutes of music and 15 minutes of conversation, and then some changeover. In a normal audition process for us, we will have like 10 to 15 people. So over the course of 2 or 3 nights, we'll do 5 or 6 people a night, and it's all we don't line up the same people on the same night. Sometimes it works out that way. We'll have 4 or 5 female vocalists all back to back, but we audition them individually.
And so it's 45 minutes per each female vocalist, and you're just there for like 4 hours or something with some of your volunteer team members?
Yeah, and because we do auditions twice a year, and because people on our team, they want to be part of bringing new people onto our team. One of the give and take with musicians in our church is like we have really high expectations, but we're also going to build our team with really great musicians. So you're going to have the joy of playing with other really great musicians. So they want to be part of that, and it's a couple times a year. We give them a lot advance notice. Like we'll give them 2 or 3 months notice on the dates. And we have multiple, and also we're not asking them to be there for 3 nights. We'll change the team up depending on who's available.
And do you do the same 2 or 3 songs per audition? So the band just keeps playing the same 2, but you keep cycling through people?
So we do the same thing as Brenton. We will, depending on instrument, we'll give them, so like if it's a drummer, we might do Only King Forever, I think, like has that big drum intro. Or if it's a guitar thing, like we'll give them songs that have a guitar lead line. Or if it's a keyboard player, we'll give them like Waiting Here for You by Martin Smith or something. We want them to do songs, at least 1 or 2 of the songs where their instrument is the feature thing. And they get to choose the key, and then our band just preps those through Planning Center like they normally do for a service.
That's good. Justin, how does your audition look like?
Yeah, so, and let me just say that ours has really evolved a lot over, am I allowed to say that in a Christian conversation of the word evolve? It's really evolved over the time that I've been overseeing the worship ministry, which has been for about 8 or 9 years at this point. And the reason that I say that is because I think it's really important for listeners. If you have a church of like 100, your process should not look the same necessarily as ours. I think the bigger your church is and the more complex your worship ministry is, the more complex your process should be to get involved. If you have a 100-person church and you're fine with the guy who just started learning how to play guitar and he has a $100 Yamaha, don't put him through all of this stuff. You're going to have a different process. So, but with saying that, so what we do is we have those first 2 steps. They have to read the book. They have to fill out the application. We're not doing a video tryout yet, but it's something that I'm definitely thinking about doing. So what we do is we have about 5 songs that we choose, and we try to choose different songs based on instruments and also based on tempos. We've auditioned drummers before that are really good at fast songs, and they're really terrible at slow songs, kind of like Lars from Metallica. It's just certain different things just don't work as well. So we pick those different songs, and what we do is we'll schedule a full band to be there, kind of like what Chris was talking about, and they're all prepared to play through all the songs, and we'll schedule people, and we usually do about 30-minute increments, and I'll invite a bunch of my worship leaders to come be a part of it. We actually have about 20 worship leaders at our church and 14 different worship teams. So I invite them to come because, number one, I want them to have an opportunity to hear the new people that are auditioning, because I've found that I can involve new people in the worship ministry, but if they've never heard them, they don't want to use them. So I invite them to come and be a process, and we actually have a piece of paper that is a pretty complex rating scale, where they'll rate them based on their tempo, based on their pitch, based on their tone. We even have one on there about stage presence, which I know kind of sounds fleshly. But we have all these different categories where they can rate them on a scale, and then they can write down comments. So what we'll do is they show up, we'll pray for them, first of all, and then I'll ask them which song they would like to start off with, because that's usually a nice icebreaker for them. There's one that they really feel good about and they've mastered, and we'll allow them to do that one first. And then I'll try to pick something that I feel like is the opposite of what they just picked. If they're a singer and they picked melody, I'll pick a song that does harmony. If they picked a slow song, then I want to hear the fast song. And sometimes we'll throw in, just for fun, a song that they weren't prepared for. And the reason I do that is because I want to see how they do just on the fly. Are they able to learn a song really quick? Because we've actually auditioned people before that did phenomenal at the audition because they had practiced the songs 100 times for weeks and weeks and weeks. But when it came to playing a worship service and they had 4 days to prepare, it didn't go so well. So we like to kind of get a sense for how they do on the fly. So what we'll do from there is I'll collect all of those responses that I'll get. We usually have about 10 people on the panel. Maybe 7 of them are worship leaders, and then 3 of them are various worship musicians. We'll bring in a drummer, a bassist, a guitarist, and then I'll go through those with. There's another pastor that assists me in the worship ministry, and we'll just kind of decide, do we want this person in? And the reason I do that is because just in case, for some reason, if I think, man, this guy is an amazing electric guitarist, and then all 9 of the other people said, no, we don't think he's great. And we also put a question on there, would you use him on your team? Because some of the times we find the worship leaders, they'll say, yeah, this guy's amazing, he's really great, he should be in the worship ministry, but they wouldn't ever use him on their team. And that's kind of telling. We actually had a guy at our church for a while that used to be a teacher at Musicians Institute in LA, a phenomenal guitar player, and but he was still playing like it was the 80s. So he didn't fit super well within our worship ministry, and I found out through that process that most of my worship leaders didn't want to use him. So what we'll do from that point is we'll follow up. Are we talking about follow-up yet, how we respond, or that's the next question?
Well, yeah, that's the next question. But so real quick, this is your once a year open audition when you do this, Justin. And how many nights does it take for you to get through all of the people that want to try out?
Yeah, we usually we do it once a year, and we'll usually do it on a Sunday after church, and we'll just get it done in one day. Then depending on the need throughout the rest of the year, I may have one-on-one auditions. Like I said earlier, if I get a drummer, fill out a Connect card, I'm going to get him in here ASAP to audition him. If I get a singer, we have quite a few of those, I may tell them to wait for our next open audition.
Mm-hmm. And when do you guys find is the best time to do auditions? Like I think, Chris, you said middle of the week, nighttime, evenings. Justin, you said after church. I mean, those work for you guys?
Yeah, I think you just got to find what works for your culture. We're suburbs, so we have a lot of people who are driving. So we do, evenings. I think we go from like 7 till 10. The last one will end. If people want to be part of it, they will say yes to the audition time that you give them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. All right, so you've auditioned these people. Here's the next question. How do you tell people no? How do each of you go about telling somebody, sorry, you're not good enough, here are some areas to work on? Let's start with Brenton.
Yeah, I think just quickly and honestly. If I can tell right then and there, I don't say I'll call you. I'll just tell them. So usually it sounds about like this. Thank you for being here. After playing with you, I can tell you don't have the skill level to play with our team, so we're not going to plug you in. But, and I love to give people some things maybe they can work on, and, maybe invite them to come back the next year or the next time. But, yeah, I just think being really honest and doing it quick, pulling the Band-Aid off, and I think people respond well to that and respect that. And
that's good. Chris?
Yeah, we tell people right up front at the very beginning they're going to get one of 3 answers, and it's either going to be yes, no, or not yet. And so we set them up with that expectation right from the very, very beginning. Literally in the first email that I send them with instructions, it has in that email, if you're invited to a live audition, we'll do this, and then we will give you one of 3 answers. So a yes is, like the guys have said, our worst, you've got the skill level, the character stuff. We're excited about. Our worship leaders would schedule you, and if you've got multiple worship leaders at your church, I'll echo that. You make sure that your worship leaders will be willing to schedule them on teams, and then it's like, okay, great, you're in, you're part of the team, and now we're going to find a Sunday, and then the step is find Sundays, make sure you get them in. If it's a no, for us, we will say no either on a skill side or on a character side, and we've told people before, There are some character things that we're wondering about, and man, you can play circles around these people, but there's some things that we're concerned about. And so because we love you and want to see you grow as you follow Jesus, you're part of our church. Like still your pastor, and so stay, because don't leave the church over this. And this isn't a death sentence, but there's a reason for no. And sometimes on the skill side, it's just like, either because we do video auditions as the first step, it's rare that somebody just crashes and burns in a live audition. It's usually more around like, it's the guy who still plays like it's the 80s, or it's the woman, man, she can sing, but her tone, there's just nowhere for it to blend with our existing singer. So sometimes it's a no because of that. We're not able to tell people right away because we do all of our auditions. So it might take us 2 or 3 days to do all of the auditions. And then I do some debrief. Our worship leaders are actually the ones who decide yes or no, because they are the ones who schedule people on our teams, not me as the pastor. So if worship leader A is leading a Sunday, he schedules his team. So ultimately the worship leaders make the decision, and I'm there as part of the process. But that just takes time. We need to do that together.
Yeah. So how do you, Chris, tell people no on the video audition side?
Oh, yeah. So once people are kind of, they're in the pool, they've submitted their info, they get a quick response, like an auto response, we'll be in touch. And then once we go live with live auditions, the people who were invited, they get an email and an invitation to schedule. The people who aren't invited to audition, it depends on like the level of conversation and the level of relationship. Anywhere from, it's a quick email, thanks for doing this, really appreciate it, we're not going to invite you in this time. And sometimes, depending on personality and history, it'll be a phone call. If somebody shows up at your church and they are like passionate about worship ministry, and they do all the steps and they're really excited, and then they get back an email that's like a thanks but no thanks, you got I think you got a bit of a pastoral responsibility to like help them understand the process and help them along. So sometimes it depends, but we always communicate to people if they're not invited to a live audition. We communicate why. That's good.
All right, Justin, how do you tell people no?
So we used to do it in person or on the phone, and we've moved to email. I have a little bit of heartburn about that because I know email is not as personal, but the reason that we did that is because it's a very emotional subject to talk about, and we found that people didn't remember anything about the conversation that we had. All they remember is that church is really mean and they told me we can't sing on their worship team. So we moved to doing email because we wanted to make sure that it was very clear that they would be able to read over it a couple of times. And what we do is sometimes there are those people where we just have to tell them, hey, we're really sorry, but we just don't think that this is your calling. But we think that you may be very gifted in other ways, and we don't want those other ministries to miss out on you. For the people that we tell not yet, we'll give them personal recommendations based on what we feel like they need to grow on, and we'll give them solutions for that. Like we may say, hey, your timing is just a little off. You tend to speed up in songs, so we suggest practicing with a metronome. Or we'll say, hey, you're a great singer, but you're pretty consistently flat when you get to high notes. So we really suggest that you sing long tones or invest in getting vocal lessons. And I'm just a big fan of putting the ball in their court, because then they can't say, man, that church, I guess I'm just not good enough for their worship ministry. But we can always say with confidence that we gave them a roadmap, so that if they followed that roadmap faithfully and consistently, that they should be able to get to a point where they would be able to be in our worship ministry.
That's really good. Okay, that's how you say no. So what happens if you say yes and they pass the audition? Do you guys have like, okay, here, read this book and come to a few rehearsals first, just observe, or do you just throw them into the deep end? What does it look like at each of your churches? Chris?
Yeah, you probably know the answer. We throw them in, and it's like, man, if you're on the team, you're on the team. And we've already evaluated your skill, and we've spent some time getting to know you and your heart and your character. And so, yep, if it's a yes, you're in. Sometimes sometimes it's like a delayed yes, and this is different from the not yet, but like we just had a guy who, man, he auditioned on electric and it was a wow. But there was like, man, but before you get on with our teams, you got to spend like a couple days with a couple of our electric guitar players just to like really nail your tone, and you got to update some stuff in your pedal board. But man, once that's done and we're good to go, yeah, you're available and you're eligible to be scheduled. And then I really encourage our worship leaders, like, find an excuse to get that person on your team for sure in the next month. Don't say yes to them and then, you're waiting 3 months or 6 months, because then they're going to feel like, oh, I thought you said I was part of the team. We also bring people into what we call Creative Community Night, which is our version of team nights, and those happen once every like 6 to 8 weeks. And we say, like, now you're part of the team, so you're part of the community, and so you better show up and be part of that too. There's some expectation on the other side, but yeah, we get them involved right away.
That's good. Okay, last question then, I guess. Do you guys have like a probationary period?
Yeah, there's definitely a probationary period or a trial period. Usually it's about 3 months. And so what I'll do if someone does a great job at their audition is, for me, the next step is to come. We do have a midweek rehearsal Thursday night. So I'll do kind of what Chris does for his initial audition then. So I'll schedule them on Planning Center. They'll be in the training position, it's called. So whatever they're on. So they'll come early. I'll make sure they've got the feel for Planning Center. I'd show them how to use our in-ear monitors and all of that. And then they plug into a monitor and play along. And they can hear themselves and I can hear them, but they're not coming through the house or in the mix. They're not going to be playing that Sunday. So that's kind of like a training kind of thing. And then we'll do this schedule a month out. So if they audition at the beginning of the month, if it's like a one-on-one, I'll just say, okay, let me schedule you for a rehearsal, come then. And I'll say, you won't be scheduled until next month. And so their probation period begins the first time they're scheduled for the next kind of several rotations. And I just let them know that up front, and just say, I'm going to get to know you, you're going to get to know me, in case there's just something's not fitting. And I let them know, it's a big commitment to be a part of the team, a lot of time, a lot of investment. You might find you might be doing a great job, but you might realize this is probably just a little bit too much for me right now. So it also gives them a chance to say, no hard feelings, hey, I just feel like I'm not able to commit to this.
That's good.
Yeah, we don't do an official probationary period. I mean, I guess in a sense, like, everyone's on probation. I mean, if there's stuff that comes up in somebody's life, it doesn't matter if they've been on the team for 5 years, we're going to sit down and talk about it, because we're always driven by that Psalm 78, 72. Like, we always care about skill. We always care about character. It's not just, to get in the pool. And so I will for sure do some more intentional follow-up for somebody like the first, second, third time they're on. And I'll also really lean on our worship leaders. Like, our worship leaders are really the ones who are spending the most time with their teams. But we don't have an official kind of like, dotted line, okay, now you're in. We do it right from the beginning. But I think pastorally there's sort of the responsibility, even just to help them develop and make sure, like Brent was saying, like, we talked about expectations, but now you're in it. Like, is this too much? I mean, we ask our teams to show up at 6:30 on Sunday morning, and in February in Canada, that's not exactly the most pleasant time of day. Yeah. And so I try to keep conversation open, especially early in the process, and I try to keep them really motivated and encouraged. So, like, if they're the first time I see them on, I'm before the service, between services, after service, I'm cheering them on. I'm going up there. I'm asking them to show me their gear, if they're a guitar player, whatever. Like, I'm just showing a lot of interest in their first couple times to really encourage them.
That's good. All right, last question. Do you guys have any final thoughts for our listeners on auditions in general? Just a final encouragement, each of you?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think something for those of you who are listening that come from smaller churches, Justin had some great insight for you. And I came from a church in Florida, about 2,500, maybe about your size, Chris, and came to a smaller church here in Monterey. And, the process looks different for everyone, but the way that I approach it, since I'm one of the pastors here at this church, is I look at that audition time as more than a musical time. So this might be different philosophically, from what you may want to do. But the way that I look at it is, I just say I want to plug these people in to our church family somehow, some way. It may be in the music team, it may not. And since our church is a little smaller, and since I've just put a high priority on that, we've got time to meet with, pretty much everyone who comes along. I realize bigger churches and, like you said, Justin, 14 worship teams, that just doesn't work. But my philosophy is, that audition time, that's a door to try to get people in. That's not necessarily the wall that keeps people out. And so that time for me to meet with them one-on-one personally, maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 people ends up on a sanctuary worship team, a pretty low percentage, but every single one of those people gets some type of next step towards getting involved in our church family. That might be just come a little longer, you're brand new. That might be maybe get involved with the tech team, or that may be, you really need to be in a life group, or a lot of times it's musical instruction training like Justin was describing. But the goal for me is, since I've got the time and I'm not flooded with dozens of auditions, I just approach that as, this is a time, musical or not, for me to figure out a way to get this person more integrated into the life and family of our church.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I think we've all said that, and to hear it again, like, depending on the size of your church, the process is going to look different. So it's less about copying and more about, how can you sort of like have all these things contribute to help you develop your own process that's going to work best. Alex, I think, the audition process is so fascinating that I actually wrote an ebook on it. And it's been surprising to me how helpful it's been for people. But I guess, who spends time really dissecting the process? And I need to update it because I haven't updated that ebook since I came here. But now that we're doing this, I'm going to update the ebook with like a version 1 and version 2. Because the church I was at previously, we didn't do videos. It was a smaller church, more rural setting. So if people go, can I plug this? Like, go to christiancanada.com/auditions, and I'll put the ebook there, and people can download it and take what's helpful and spit out the rest. But I think if you can think through philosophically, pastorally, what's the role of auditions in your community? We've each spoken about that. And then how do you do it in a way that helps you move the ball down the field, or helps you achieve vision as a church? That's what I'm really thinking about, is when we do our audition process, it's really part of us fulfilling our vision as a church, and we're looking for people who bring that heart and hands, that skill and character. And so it's not just, like we've all said, it's not just like, can you jump over the fence? But we're trying to do something here together as a community. And the audition process is in worship ministry, it's one of the few ministries where you've got the opportunity to really evaluate and encourage people in this way. And so I just really encourage people, spend time thinking through the process philosophically and pastorally in a way that's going to really benefit your community.
That's good. Justin, final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things for auditions is communication. You want to really make sure to communicate to the people up front so they know what's expected of them, so they understand what the process looks like. You're communicating after so they understand what are the next steps, or if they didn't make the team, what are the things that they need to work on. Then I think the other thing is automation and organization. As much as you can automate your ministry and organize it, the better. If you're typing up your welcome email every single time, it's time to create a template. If you're choosing new songs every single time, you should look back to what did you do last year, maybe update it for some new songs that are doing. The more that you can organize and automate things, the easier it's going to be, and the better that things are going to go.
That's really good. Thank you, guys. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I'll probably link to all of your resources. And Chris, I'll link to your ebook on auditions. And maybe I can even get your first initial email template that you send to your people in some sort of format, and I can link that as well. So yeah, we want to help. We want to help all of our listeners just be able to do this. So we'll give them the resources in the show notes for this. But thank you guys so much for being here. And I'm so thankful for the wisdom that you brought to the podcast and to our listeners today. Well, that's it for today's episode. I hope that this episode was helpful to you. I hope that you learned a few tips and tricks for your auditions. And I really hope that God brings some really talented, really godly musicians to your team at your church. And I pray that you are faithful to disciple them and train them and pour into them well. So that's it. If you can, please leave me a review on iTunes, and otherwise I will see you back here next month for another helpful episode. God bless you guys as you lead your people in worship.
So won't you carry me